on to the Planning Commission. Director Spencer will fill in.
I will not pretend for a moment that I am Mayor Wheeling. So we have two reappointments to the Planning Commission. This is Eric Peterson. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Eric Peterson and Maggie Rich, who are both being reappointed. In Eric's case, this is second term on the Planning Commission. And for Maggie, this will be her first full term on the Planning Commission. She was originally appointed to a position that was an unfilled vacancy. So this is technically her first real term in the 4-year term.
Questions? Yeah, Jeff, as a recent Planning Commission, you might know these folks.
Yes, I just was going to chime in and say they were both wonderful to work with and offered really different and nice viewpoints. And yeah, absolutely, they should stay on. We're lucky to have them.
Okay. Denise.
I just want to go on the record by saying that I met Maggie Rich right after I moved up here, and I was living in Manette, and these two women came to my driveway and just ended up making friends. And she worked for me at the YWCA. She's an incredible mind and advocate, and for Bremerton. I think her dad works at the shipyard. You know, she just wow, I'm so glad she continues to be engaged. We must be doing something right to attract people like that. So just a shout out to M.
Anna.
Thanks. The applications for both of them were great. I was so happy that they were part of the commission.
All right. I've actually known them both for a very long time as well, or cross paths with them. So I think it's exciting, and usually this would go on consent. So I think that will what we'll do. All right. Thank you. All right. So both of those will be on consent. Next up is Sergeant Ryan Heffernan. Did I get that correct? Fifth Amendment to the agreement with Kitsap County for the incarceration of city prisoners. Take it away.
Sure. So this is the Fifth Amendment, the agreement. It's been in effect since 2018. And the agreement generally governs the conditions and payment Kitsap County to house our arrestees. There's no significant changes this year. The big things, the cost per bed, and that hasn't changed for the last 2 years.
Quinn's asking about a link. Sorry, Jeff's right there. All right, council, any questions?
Thank you, Sergeant Heffernan. So one of the things, and when this came across our desk at Public Safety, I was just curious about what the average annual cost was for incarcerating.
So I was able to pull in for it's Lieutenant.
Lieutenant,
That's
thank
fine.
you.
But for the past 5 years, it's gone up. It does kind of vary. Those COVID years.
Right.
In 2017, it was about $964,000. 2018, $1,245,000. 2019, $1,174,889. 2020, $1,215,993. 2021, $2,243,192. And this year we're at, through the end of October, $1,584,146. It's been about $158,000 a month. So taking that into account, projected about $100,000 for this year.
Can you repeat last year's total for me?
2021 was $2,243,192.
Why was there a spike in that year?
I wouldn't be able to say with absolute certainty, but my guess would be that 2020, with COVID law changes and restrictions from the jail, that it would be significantly less than 2021.
You said it was 2,243,000 roughly, and then the year prior it was 1,215,000.
Correct.
And then roughly this amount for this year is
1,900,000 projected based upon where we're at through the end of October.
okay. And what happens if we go over that amount?
If we go over 1,900,000,
Yeah,
my understanding is we would pay it.
city would.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have now. I just was looking, I just wanted to know kind of the trend. The hope is always that we underspend. I mean, to be fiscally conservative, but also to be, hopefully, the crime is going down and we have divergent programs available that are working. That's all the questions I have. Thank you very much for bringing those numbers to the table.
All right, anybody else in council? Anna?
In the past, the department has presented more of a breakdown, not just on the amount of money that it can cost, but the types of crimes, the duration of stay, and cause. Is that something you'll be presenting in the near future?
I can do that if you'd like. I don't have that information tonight, but certainly,
Okay, so it's not like a regular route schedule thing.
I'm not sure to be honest with you.
Okay.
Honest with you.
Okay. I would find that very interesting. Anybody else? All right, I got two. I got three.
Okay,
Council
so
President.
I just want to, what are we asking for?
In the past, the Bremerton Police Department has given a breakdown on the demographics of the incarcerated population, what malfeasance
Mhm.
brought them there, how long they are in there for. And I just found that interesting in the past.
We want that to go through like, public safety? We're just talking about an email here, I assume. We're not talking about a presentation, or are we looking for an annual presentation or? Yeah,
Good data. I just want to make sure that it's germane to what we're asking, but that, will this data inform whether or not you,
So,
I
okay.
would love to see that data. I think
yeah.
Public safety would be awesome.
All right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, how would we like to treat this?
Consent?
Consent it is. Thank you, Lieutenant. Okay, next, Nick, is it a tie? All right, well, Public Works Agreement with AJ Spray Foam Services LLC, DBA Slabjack Geotechnical for 2022 sidewalk trip hazard removal project. Take it away.
Thank you. It's kind of a tongue twister, isn't it? So on the 21st, we will be bringing forward a public works agreement. This will be for our annual sidewalk trip hazard removal program. This is actually the third contractor into this program that the city's developed. I can go to the next slide. So just a little bit of background on this program, kind of the why and kind of where we're headed with this program. So kind of going back to 2018, the city obtained and contracted for high-level assessment of citywide sidewalk system. That was 132 miles of sidewalk that was surveyed. So when you think about all the sidewalk in the city, it's quite significant. Put it all together. So the information that we got out of that infrastructure management services study, one of the things they look at is what they call faults. And faults are, in layman's terms, basically trip hazards where you've got rising, settling of the concrete. So of the 132 miles that surveyed, 78 miles of sidewalk was identified as having some sort of moderate high-level fault. So this information is great from the standpoint that as we develop this program, we'll be able to identify really high priority locations, focus those efforts where they're needed the most. And then as we carry the program along, we're able to kind of maximize where those funds are going. This particular contract, I want to be clear that it addresses these faults two ways. And one of those ways is by actually injecting foam underneath the sidewalk and raising the sidewalk or by grinding. So if you're ever walking on the sidewalk and you kind of see, you'll see kind of there's some grinding that's happened there to kind of mitigate that trip hazard. As I mentioned, this is the third contract. This is budgeted annually at $175,000 a year. It's really a very cost-effective way to minimize these trip hazards. And as you can see, the last two contracts, we've been able to address about 20 miles of sidewalk. So very good progress we're making on this program. Next slide. This map, kind of hard to see on the screen here, but this kind of shows some of the progress made previously. So in green and orange, those were the previous two contracts that we awarded. In red is the proposed locations for this contract. We're looking again around that 800 locations, 800 faults that we plan to address, nearly 9 miles of sidewalk. I should have put a little asterisk there. We will have the opportunity, of course, if we don't find enough trip hazards in the locations we identified, we'll just move that contractor to other streets in the area. Because 60 working days was what we put into the contract, and all specified in the pricing of the contract. Next slide. We opened bids for this project on December 1st. We used the MRSC small works roster due to the size of the project. Our estimate front was a little bit higher than our budget, so we put in a couple of alternate bids just to make sure we're maximizing our work on this contract. AJ Spray Foam Services was the one single bidder on this project. They have performed for us under the last two contracts, done a great job. I'm excited to have them on board here and be able to get all the work done that we anticipated. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Council question. It was Councilmember Coughlin first.
Keep the buzzer.
Here's
Next. Thanks so much, Mr. Atai. I think the only question I have is how long was the bid open for?
It was open, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. This one, we were kind of shooting through some holidays. We had it open for about 3 weeks.
Oh, okay. Oh, fantastic. All right. I was making sure it wasn't, 5 days through a weekend or anything like that. Right. And any other companies that normally we'd expect to place a bid that didn't?
There were a couple companies that wanted to perform on this, but because our preference currently is this foam injection, there's just not a lot of companies that have the equipment to do that work. We've talked internally about maybe, depending on what the other locations look like, maybe we put out a contract that just does grinding. So in that case, maybe you get a company that, has the equipment to do the grinding. It's not as specialized. So it's something to consider.
Okay, no, fantastic. Looking forward to the work. Such a great program.
I just wanted to see the slide again that showed, because I see the sub areas here, but I like seeing that other slide that showed the different areas. And I'll just take a picture of that.
Go back to the slide with the map.
Will it be in the packet?
It's not in this packet.
Yes. Next slide. So this map is actually on the city's website. Under engineering project.
Thank you. That's it.
Small nitpick of somebody, red, green, colorblind, if it's possible to do like bright red, blue, and black in the future. Yeah, that's a small nitpick. Thank you.
Anna, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Atai. Just a bittersweet thing. I'm so happy that people who already have sidewalks will now have better sidewalks. And someday my district will be like that. In the meantime, you were talking about the polyurethane foam, that's what the Slabjack Geotech is using. What are some alternatives to that other companies might use?
As far as the actual foam, it's a chemical, so it's not a proprietary foam. I mean, there's other companies that provide the same services, so it's just more of a specialized. You have to have very specialized equipment. It's actually really neat if you haven't seen it in person. They do it really quick and just kind of lift those slabs up. The other method would be grinding. Again, that's, you talk to the people that do the foam injection, they're gonna say that's better than the people, people that do the grinding and say that's the best way to do it. It sounds like we've had a lot of success with the foam injection, so certainly we'll keep that in mind for, future contracts if we're seeing the ability to, accomplish the same goal with a different method. In outlook. Does that answer your question?
85% of it,
Okay.
which is, thank you. So I was just wondering, because the grinding does sound like a much more environmentally sustainable, ecologically sound way to repair sidewalks than polyurethane foam, which damages the environment by being created, by being shipped, by
Right.
being applied, by degrading.
Right, and actually I guess as far as the polyurethane foam, it is, once it dries, it's safe. The grinding, the challenge with the grinding is if the fault is high enough, you kind of lose a lot of your sidewalk, so it may not work in every single location. This contract does include grinding, so we are still gonna have grinding where it makes sense. And again, other methods that may seem suitable. Again, we're just trying to stretch the budget as best we can, do it most effectively and efficiently as we can. And, obviously, constructing new sidewalks is always going to be a lot more expensive.
Can I ask one follow-up question? Just one. So, do you have a rough estimate on how much it costs to do this particular type of repair to a sidewalk, as opposed to creating new sidewalk, like, a foot, the price per foot, for example?
Gosh, I don't know. Karen, if you have any cost, I want to say we're paying probably just under $200 per location under this contract to address it through either grinding or the foam injection. If we were to replace a sidewalk through removal construction, I mean, you're probably looking at, probably $100 a square.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So just give a perspective or a data point on the question. Our city crews can put in, they're averaging about $90 a foot for the cost for putting in sidewalk. Doesn't include removal and replacement, just to put in. If it was going to be a contractor to do that, I mean, typically they're 2 to 3 times higher than it would be for our city. So just to give you a data point there, and if you would like me to run some numbers on that, apples cost.
No, I'm very happy with the ballpark figure.
Okay.
With a Shane Weber version of a ballpark figure, which is probably off like 40 cents.
Orders of magnitude cheaper. Right? And I mean, 800 foot houses. That is a screaming deal.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something that we get done in a very short period of time. Works really good. So, I mean, it's significantly less.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the council? All right, so I'm going to ask a couple questions. So in this project, is there specific grinding and specific slab jacking or whatever we call, in that, or is this like a overarching bid? I guess what I'm getting at is I'm going to assume it's cheaper to grind than it is to do the slab jacking. So like, I guess what I'm saying is, who makes the decision on what gets what?
Yeah, so what we'll do is when, we'll have an inspector assigned to this job, so, we'll have oversight over the project, so we'll kind of be directing the contractor, and kind of looking at specific areas. So for instance, you may have a sidewalk that has a retaining wall, next to it, so that's, obviously not a great candidate for polyurethane injection. In that case, we would direct them to grinding if it makes sense. Most of them are pretty obvious when you're out in the field, but we have the bid set up to where we've got flexibility to direct them just based on the field conditions.
Right, I guess the question I was getting at is, per instance, are we paying, the polyurethane rate for everything because of this, the way when you brought up the idea of possibly contracting as grinding and the polyurethane separately, it made me wonder if, are we paying are we getting an efficiency, or are we paying sort of polyurethane pricing for every foot of service we're getting with this company?
Yeah, so with this bid, the pricing was pretty similar. Obviously, with grinding, it's a little bit more labor intensive, a little bit more time to do grinding. So it becomes a mathematical formula of labor cost and versus the cost to do the polyurethane. But certainly, that's a interesting point that, if this were to be 100% grinding, does that cost come down?
Yeah, I
Don't
was
have
just
to-
curious. Okay, I think that's enough on this then. Okay, go ahead, Denise.
I really like data-driven decisions. And so whenever we can get data in priorities, I mean, you guys are always bombarded with, how do you set your priorities? And I'm so happy to see the connections with real numbers. So thank you.
All right. I would like to treat this. Consent. Consent is good. Hang on. All right, thank you. I just want to ask, I'm gonna ask this question because I can. Where are we with getting sidewalks in neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks? So, it definitely comes up. I know that like when we do new development, sometimes we'll make them put a sidewalk in, and then we'll have this like island of sidewalk in an area. But most sidewalks were put in when the neighborhoods were initially sort of platted and developed, which then says, well, there's a money thing here, right? Like, and people who have sidewalks might be paying a higher property tax. I'm just curious, like, do we do it? What's our strategy? Do we actually do it? Is it a low? I mean, anyways, it's come up, and I just kind of wanted to refresh everybody on what's reality with neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks right now.
Yeah, so I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, what we're dealing with is neighborhoods that were developed a long time ago that when they were developed, they didn't have the standard to put in sidewalks. And so a lot of what you see out there right now is that type of development. And over the years, developments have been required to put in sidewalks, so new developments have them. And when we required developers to put that in, then they would put in sidewalks. But I think right now, here we sit, we have a lot of development throughout the city that does not have sidewalks. And what we do is we have what we call a non-motorized plan. It was developed in the mid-2000s. And that plan had a pretty significant public outreach component to it that basically identified sidewalk gaps in the city. And it's fairly substantial. There's a lot of sidewalk projects listed in that document. And that document, together with our comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2016, has additional sidewalk projects in it. So those two plans together, with those projects identified, is what that plan is what we're working on to put in sidewalks. And we go after funding primarily for our sidewalk projects. And the problem with the funding that we go after is that it has requirements to it that, when we apply for a grant, we need to be competitive with that grant. So what we do is we try to look at what do we have in our plan, right? What can we reasonably apply funding for those sidewalk apps to get the funding. And that's a big part of what we do. And, you know, I just want to stress that there's a lot of projects in there. And there's not a lot of funding to go around. So we have to be strategic on which, you know, sidewalks that we use when we submit for grants, because we're competing with other agencies and their projects. And we want to make sure that we're successful when we do that. So that's one part of what we look at when we look at sidewalks in the city and constructing those. The street crew right now, they put in, I think it's about 1/4 mile a year, Tom, is their goal. Half a mile a year, the city street crew will construct sidewalks. And so they have that as part of their plan. And so they do that work, they do curb ramp work as well, upgrade curb ramps. So we are actively working on the plan, and I know that, you know, there's just a lot to do. So, so we are actively working on that plan. But those two documents, the non-motorized plan and the comp plan, are the two documents that we use. And the projects associated with those are the ones that we look at to implement, because that's what was approved.
Great.
So,
Good.
and I think the last thing I want to say on that is that the non-motorized plan, the comprehensive plan are up for an update next year. With finalizing in the following year, 2024. So those two plans will be looked at next year. And updated. So,
Great. Thanks for indulging me and all that good information. Next up, Karen Weichel is here to present a new ordinance amending ordinance number 5442, establishing the city of Bremerton's fiscal year 2022 budget as amended by ordinance number 5450.
Thank you. Good evening, council, mayor. So with the adoption of this ordinance, the final amended 2022 budget will be $245,712,309, including fund balances. And it's consistent with prior years. We're bringing to you a final budget amendment that includes adjustments to correct the estimated beginning fund balances to actuals, and to incorporate items that have previously been brought and approved by council from the mid-year amended budget to now. And then there's also some housekeeping items that have not yet been approved by council, but all the details are provided in your packet. And with that, I'm here for any questions.
Okay, council. Jeff.
I just had a couple clarifying questions as I went through. Oh, I know, we're so close. I know, right? I'm like, I noticed there was a sales tax increase mentioned, and I was curious what that was about. It's like a $1.5 million revenue.
Yeah. So we went ahead and did, so because our sales tax collected this year was trending so much higher than our budget, we went in and did an adjustment for that. Normally, we wouldn't do that, but it was just so much higher that we wanted to capture that in our fund balances estimated going forward. You have more, and that's for general fund.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we believe they'll actually come in higher than that. So right now they're trending about $2 million above. So, but 1.5 still felt conservative, but Wanda, it's such a, you know, the spread that Karen answered it great. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. No, that makes a lot of sense now. I just want to make sure it wasn't some weird raise in tax or anything like that, so. And the only other thing I saw was, so starting on page 49 of our packet, it's a lot of the water, stormwater, other utility fund balances. There's, at the end, there's a fund balances that says beginning working capital. And I noticed those were adjusted. I'm sure I just don't understand what the working capital fund is, but it struck me as a little odd to have the beginning fund balance changing with this end year adjustment.
So when we start the year, let me go backwards. We're always adjusting our fund balances to actuals. So when we went into our amended mid-year, we would have had last year's ending actuals normally, but this year, I think we had it budgeted. Is that right, Mike? And then, so this is actually ending, beginning So it carries forward year after year, so I'm getting hung up on that, but the beginning balances are adjusted because at mid-year, we didn't have the total for that year closed yet. Like we get audited later, does that make sense? So if we don't have the year closed before April-ish going into the mid-year, we just use, I think, the budgeted amount at that time,
that makes
so.
sense.
That's correct.
So like in the fall, you're projecting we'll have a beginning year balance of 20, fall of 21, beginning year balance of 22 will be this. We don't actually know that because we're not in 22 yet. Mid-year adjustments, we actually know what the beginning year balance was, and we adjust that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
this is basically truing it up to actually what happened.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So this didn't,
Yeah,
basically
so
this didn't get, not to say it didn't get captured, but
there's a timing difference with this year's mid-year, so we have a goal to try to have all that in before we do the mid-year budget, so you're seeing that change happen then, not at the end of the year.
oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right.
Yeah, it's, we only come twice, right, with these amendments, so
Right.
the timing's a little off.
Okay, and this year was just a little different.
Yeah, it was, I forget what month we closed, but it was off, I think, a month and when we went to mid-year.
Okay, nope, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for indulging my curiosity.
All right, so it sounds like consent. All right, thank you, finance team. All right, next, Parks Director Jeff Elevado, to present, the, first presentation. Oh, we've already had the first presentation of council meeting for the public hearing for the property use agreement with Active Construction for the Pine Road Stormwater Base Improvement Project. So this will be a public hearing, on Wednesday. Hi. Okay. So, yeah, to refresh, basically, there's a, because of some construction, there's some property that they want to use as a lay down yard, and in exchange, they're gonna leave it in much better shape than we find it. They're gonna remove debris and clean it up, so. And I wouldn't think there's much to discuss tonight, so thank you so much. Okay, so that will be a public hearing. Next, City Attorney Brett Jett that's how you say it, right? Is it Jetty? Oh, we change that to a Y? Okay, ordinance amending section 2.76.120 of the
So fast. So this is just a public hearing. Will there be, when is the opportunity for us to ask questions about the?
after, so I believe that there'll be a public hearing on Wednesday. And then we'll have our own, we'll have discussion, and I think it'll be presented for decision on the.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, let me just get through this again. So Brett Jetty, City Attorney, is here to discuss the ordinance amending section 2.76.120 of the Bremerton Municipal Code entitled Exception for Recycled Products. Very exciting. Take it away.
Very exciting. So there's recent legislation from the Washington State Legislature that requires cities over 25,000 population to implement an ordinance about compost procurement for projects that the city does. So construction, park maintenance, that sort of thing. And so this is just the ordinance that would implement that. It has a number of exceptions for when compost products don't need to be used, and then also has the reporting requirements that are required by the statute to the Department of Ecology. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Council, okay, and I'm just gonna remind everybody to make sure you're speaking into your microphone. If you need to move it and adjust it, make sure that you're projecting into it. Anna.
Thank you, Council President. I will. Good evening, Mr. Jetty. On this one, I would really like to amend this and have, if you guys, I'm sorry, if my fellow council members will go to page 73 of the packet, you will see that the entirety of this ordinance originally was Nothing in this chapter shall prohibit the city from preferentially purchasing products made from recycled materials or products that may be recycled or reused. Which I think we can all agree is not the most full-throated embrace of durable or recyclable products. And in order to perhaps at some future point strengthen that ordinance, I would like that to stand alone and the compost procurement, which is really fun to say, just be a separate ordinance, because if you have to go through all the compost stuff in order to get to this one sentence and possibly strengthen it in future, I just think they're uncongenial companions.
I'll just say that can easily be changed. It can be its own section. That's not a problem. It would just move into probably, I think it's 2.76.170 is what it would become instead of being added into 120.
That would be very pleasant.
Assuming there's no other objections, I could make that change by next week.
Okay. Folks okay with that?
Which
Maybe-
section, which specifically are you talking about, Anna?
It's on page 73 of our packet, and if you go like to the very bottom of section 1, there's 2 lines that are not underlined.
Okay, so we're talking about,
That was
One
what
I.
that was what the ordinance looked like before the compost procurement was added. Yeah, so
Thank
I'd
you. I
just
just-
like it to stay separate, and I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, my bad.
not at all. Sorry.
Okay. So to be clear, we're not necessarily changing the language of it, but we're just kind of giving it a little more emphasis by breaking it out separately.
Just restoring it to originally it was just one line. Amongst a bunch of other
Yeah.
one-liners. So, yeah, so just keeping it with its old numbering and giving compost procurement its own number, which a topic like compost procurement certainly deserves.
Like I said, yeah, I think that's a easy enough change to make. It would
Alright.
just revert back to how it is and add a new section. So
Okay. Questions? Comments?
I would just say that, it's important that perspective is included here. And I appreciate Councilmember Mochler asking that from that perspective. I think it does maybe, in my mind now, give it a little bit more room for to pay attention a bit more. So, yeah, thank you.
Again, I would just remind you to bend your microphone down, make sure yeah, thank you. So, okay, so now the next question though is, since we're really just talking about outline structure here, is this okay with that change on consent? Okay, consent it is. Oh my goodness, it's the night of the city attorneys. Up next, I guess I actually didn't address, didn't address Brett as assistant city attorney. Okay,
that's
good.
correct. It's just assistant city attorney.
But you are a city attorney, but you are the city attorney. Okay, city attorney Kylie Fennell is here with ordinance amending chapter 3.12 of the Bremerton Municipal Code entitled 1% for Arts Fund.
So first off, there is an error in the agenda bill or in the ordinance. I guess we can talk about that. So when we originally started working on this, Mike and I thought it was 10. He said it was 5. I was like, oh, well, it was budget talk. I'll defer to you. But then we got Councilmember Coughlin sent in an email that had 10 and I was like, see, I think it was 10. Anyway, so.
I was wrong.
Right. Take the win. So, the ordinance has 10. The agenda bill has 5. So sorry that didn't get corrected when the ordinance got corrected, but we had already uploaded it. And so this is just putting into code form what you all spoke about during, budget workshop, about, stabilizing the funding for the arts, so that hopefully this will capture, what it is you intended to do. And if it doesn't, I'll go back to the drawing board.
Okay, Any questions, or we're just codifying our wishes? Is that the right word? Yes.
I am loving this. That's all I have to say. Thank you. And I believe this was originally from one of Eric's constituents, right? Then he brought it up and then, or is, no, this, okay. Oh, okay, this,
I don't know who had the original idea. I think it was Mike actually that had, well,
I wish it was me, but I'm not, it was Eric. No, I remember, and I take credit for it.
I feel like it did come from
It-
a surprising.
Correct. So Councilmember Younger brought it to Finance Committee for us to entertain the funding for the 1% for the arts, and it's made its way through to where we're at today, codifying the ordinance.
And I just want to say, I think there's a lot of like misconceptions, being a former art council member, as to how the funding actually happens, because they never, really knew how they were going to get funding, or if they, like if they could do this or that. And so I'm super excited for this, and I hope that everybody on council will support it.
Okay. How would we like to treat this? Oh, sorry. Jim.
Okay, just a quick question on mechanism, looking at the language, maybe this is for Mike, but so if we get into fall budget season and it's then that the projected revenue is less than 10 grand, it'll be filled at least 10 grand at the start of the next
Correct.
year. Okay.
So, and we'll propose right now, going into the new year, the way we passed the budget, we are spending $9,000 out of the fund balance with no revenue going in projected. So we'll true that up at mid-year to get it to the $10,000 balance. And then at year end, again, based on what the projections are and what the expenditure proposed would be, we would have that difference coming from the general fund to bring it back to 10,000. We'll always remain with the $10,000 fund balance.
Perfect. Okay, so the commission can rely on starting January 1st, they'll have 10 grand to budget out for the year.
Correct.
At least. Yeah, okay.
So just to clarify, they can spend $10,000 a year out of the general fund.
Technically no, but they will have in their fund balance $10,000. They only get what you authorize them to spend. So in 2023, right now, they have $9,000 authorized expenditure authority. They will maintain a fund balance of 10 each year, and we'll just have to keep truing that up every year from the general fund. So if the construction project didn't make up the difference, there's a lot of movement. So.
Well, but really,
So
I
we-
mean, yeah, we're gonna approve their budget, but if they have projects every each year budgeted at $9,950, and then are we gonna re-up it? Is that kind of how that's? gonna work?
Their bank account will always have 10 grand in it, but they might only spend 5. They might only spend 6. Depends on what authority you
They're
give.
gonna spend it. It's nothing. We're giving them nothing.
So, council's authority to set their budget. So you set what their expenditure authority is, just like every other fund. So depends on the request you entertain. So
Thank
yes.
you. Yes, sir. Thank you. I understood. I just,
I ask a
think-
clarifying question, I think, on
Yes.
yours. Okay. So I feel like this 9,000 came from, because there's already 1,000 there. And to true it up to 10, we needed to put 9 in. But I think our intent was that they should have $10,000 that they're allowed to spend in this coming year.
So they had $13,000 in their fund. They requested to spend 9
Oh, in next.
for next year. Correct.
And then, so we're gonna. Okay, so I see.
This is their funding source to make sure they have money every year to be able to
So
do
what
something.
we're talking about now is a mechanism that once they spend that 9, it'll at least go back up to 10.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
One last clarifying, if this goes in, correct, if this gets voted next week, it will go into effect for 2023 or 2024.
I need to read through it to see what we have effective date. I believe it's
Well-
effective 23. So
But-
by year end to be.
But there's enough,
Yeah.
there's 13,000 in the, in the fund, so they can spend their 9. And then really, so you're right. Oh,
They can spend their 9,
yeah.
they can spend all 13 that's coming in 2023 and that's, okay,
all right,
all right, perfect.
Anna.
So we can up this, right? Like at any point, we could triple it, for example.
So if there's a request from the 1% of the arts to spend, let's say $15,000, that would be in their budget request during the year, and you can authorize that. Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question.
Jennifer?
I'm sorry. Should we still be calling it a 1% for the arts fund if now we're creating a sustainable mechanism? Shouldn't it just be shouldn't we rename it the Arts Commission Fund? That's silly to suggest.
It's semantics, but it's actually 1% for the arts is when the city does a capital project, 1% of that's gonna go into this fund. So maybe the language on it, I mean, it's fine and then weird also, I see.
Yeah, because that 1% mechanism still exists, so
Yeah.
it's still true, but I'd leave that to.
But yeah, we're not building government buildings at a high click, so,
You could just call it the Arts Commission Fund, right?
well. The plan here is though that if 1% for the arts doesn't yield enough to move the balance back over 10,000, we'll come in and top it off. Okay,
1% plus fun, I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't make sense anymore if we're creating the sustainable mechanism to call it the 1% for the arts fund. But I mean, there is a 1% for the arts fund.
Um,
Anyway.
how
I'm
big a
just-
building do we have to build to get $10,000? Because that's my next motion. Okay. All right, folks. How do you want to treat this?
Consent.
Consent. Thank you very much. All right, do I gavel before I pass it, or does she gavel? Who gavels? Okay, all right. Due to the appearance of fairness, council member Coughlin and I will now recuse ourselves to the cookie room during the discussion on item number 9.
I'll wait until they're back eating all the cookies. Okay, next on the agenda, we have LTAC Chair Denise Fry to present on item 9.
It's back. Yeah, actually, I'm very happy that Mr. Jetty is here, because I was not able to, get Wi-Fi where I was, for the lodging tax advisory committee, so I wasn't in attendance, but, from what I understand, all went well. The decisions that or the recommendations that the council made to the committee were approved in short fashion. And I want to thank Mr. Younger for the opportunity to shed some clarity on the process. We'll be doing a 360 after it's all said and done.
Thank you. And apologies, I forgot to read the title of it, which is Acceptance of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee's 2023 Funding Recommendations. Looks like public comment was provided at council meetings on November 2nd and November 16th, and recommendations have been presented with no changes recommended. So do we want to, we have a quorum here with Gwen, so we'll need, so do we want to do consent or general? Is anybody?
Consent.
But it sounds like we've got one council member who wants it to go on general business, so it will be on general business.
Yeah, they will, just for clarification, I think that if given an opportunity, they see that it's a public hearing or that it's under general business, they will probably believe that they should show up. So having said that, fully supportive of putting it under general business and
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay,
I know, that was actually a very reasonable statement, and the public is entitled to comment on any items in the consent agenda. So let us put it on consent, and then I have a comment once we're through with this little part.
okay, so it sounds like we want to do it on the consent agenda now, and then, did you want to make another comment?
Yep.
Councilmember Rockwell? Go for it.
So here's something, the underlying RCW for LTAC changed in 2021. And the new language seems to me to define tourism promotion as more than just heads in beds. And I'm going to quote, but it'll be really brief. Tourism promotion includes activities intended to attract visitors for overnight stays, comma, arts, heritage, and cultural events, comma, and recreational, professional, and amateur sports events. So just something for us to be thinking about for next year. is that heads in beds is not the only criteria.
Definitely, definitely. I think it's often used as an expression to remind us that it's really meant to bring people into our community. So, I really hope that, and I think that, City Attorney Fennel is interested. Well, she's interesting too. But she's interested in, helping flush this out a little bit, getting council really in consensus and alignment, well informed, all of that, so that we can make some direction on it, maybe more than past councils have. So looking forward to that opportunity. Thank you, Vice President.
Thank you, Councilmember Fry and Mochler for your comments. We'll put this on the consent agenda. And we're gonna go invite President Goodnow and Councilmember Coughlin back. It'll be just a moment.
What did we miss?
It's going on consent.
Wow. Good job. Oh,
And also to note that the definition on the underlying article will change to 2020.
okay. Up next is general council business. Actually, can Quinn? Okay. Quinn?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear. So, REACT Chair Quinn Denny, he is here to provide a summary of the highlights from the last meetings, I guess 2 meetings held on November 10th and December 8th.
Great. Thank you, Council President. Just to update council, we did have our final 2 meetings of REACT this year. The one agenda item as directed by council was the ordinance. And so I've received feedback from all the community members that were on the committee. Track change kind of kept track of all of those. So we do have the committee's recommendation for the creation of a commission through ordinance. What I'm going to do is loop up with legal. I'd also like to meet with the administration because the ordinance does contemplate a lot of administration involvement. And then I would like to put it on the agenda for our retreat in January so that we can kind of dig deep into it as well, as similar to the committee members who recommended. So look out for that when we come January 28th, I believe. And I will give you all an update before then.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Next, Public Works Committee Vice Chair Anna Mochler to provide a summary of the highlights from the last meeting held on November 15th, noting that this was the last Public Works Committee meeting of 2022.
Well, I'm gonna hot potato over to Counselor Jeff Coughlin because you remember how I sounded at that council meeting? Well, the Public Works was the day before that. So I was unable to sit upright, let alone attend.
All right.
Vice Chair, I'm pulling up notes and let me see. We talked about the sidewalk trip, hypochlorite, my basin. That I think one update is the streeteries policy for the businesses that had eating established in the right of way and parking spaces. Public Works is working on that. I think that they've done a nice job of reaching out to all the local business owners to get them on temporary permits and then get their feedback and trying to craft the new ordinance to get them on I believe it's a Class D permit, which could last up to 5 years. C, sorry, off on letter C. So that's in the works.
Can I ask a question
Yeah.
on that then? If a business has the permit and then is basically not actively using it, but maybe taking up the space, is there some sort of action enforcement or something? Like, because we've got some that are active downtown and we got some that are literally just taking up parking spaces, so.
We did discuss that, and I
Okay.
believe it can be written into the permit that it has to be actively used.
Yeah, come up, Todd.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the items that needs to be cleaned up with the new street route policy. And so what we're trying to do right now is, get our arms around what the issues are. And then as we develop that further, we'll have a much better policy going forward. We were following, COVID protocol from NACTO, in, putting together the prior, policy. And we reached out to the 4 businesses and told them that we were extending their existing use under the existing terms until we put the new policy together. That's absolutely something that we're looking at. And honestly, what we're doing is we're drafting what we think might be the right approach in looking at other jurisdictions' policies, and then we'll have something to really comment on and try to come forward with a policy that's going to work for the city.
Yeah, I might be able to find some resources for you too through the, or you could find them through the state and the national Main Street programs.
We've
So,
seen,
okay.
we've got, I mean, San Francisco has actually excellent street route policy. Portland, Seattle, Katie Ketter is actually the one working
Great.
on that. There's so much information that we have. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Jen.
The bird. And yeah, I talked to at least one business owner before and after Public Works reached out, and they were just so happy and kept saying, Katie was so nice and she listened to me, and excited. And that's it. And then, yeah, we talked a bit on the non-motorized comprehensive plan goals. And so I think just encourage the public and everybody to give input on the comprehensive plan, and that's a good time to update those documents. That's everything significant.
Okay, next, Public Safety Committee Chair, Vice President Jennifer Chamberlain, part of a summary of the highlights from the last meeting of 2022 held on December 1st.
Really the only agenda item, was something that we discussed here today, which was, the amendment of the, contract for the incarceration of city prisoners. So we already discussed it. We're canceling January's meeting, as I think a lot of committees are probably doing, because we will be reorganizing perhaps. So, I really don't have a report for you today.
Okay, thank you. Anna?
I'd like to do a brief report on Kitsap Transit.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I've been on Kitsap Transit since March. I requested to be on it, even though the meetings begin at 8:30 in the morning. It's been a really interesting thing, and I would value any guidance from the rest of you on it, but here are the things that I have brought up numerous times, and nobody else on the board is interested in them. For example, drivers for the first couple of years, maybe even 3 years, they'll like say start at North Base in the morning, and then they'll do a run, and then they'll have a few hours off, and then they'll go to South Base or Bremerton, or Charleston, and then do that. It's every time I've brought that up, it's almost like the senior people are proud of this. It's like, it'll make you it'll make you a better person or a better driver to do this. I've suggested raising, when they were having so much difficulty finding drivers, I've suggested raising rates of pay or increasing bonuses, and there also was no interest in doing that. There's a call a ride program in Paulsbo, Silverdale, Bainbridge. And this has 2 functions. One, it catches those people who would fall through the cracks. Otherwise who just need a ride, but they don't have an access thing. But the reason that Kitsap Transit is particularly interested in it is that it helps identify new needed routes. If they start getting a lot of calls from one area. But it's too expensive. When I asked why we could not have that in Bremerton, I was told it was too expensive. When I asked why there couldn't be more bus shelters, part of the response was that there's a difficulty with right of ways, which I totally understand. But the other response is it would be too expensive. So all of these things that to me would actually be a commitment to public transportation in the most populous city on the Kitsap Peninsula. I don't seem to have what it takes to get the rest of the board interested in it. So just reporting on all of this to you. And for example, in the last meeting, the board approved the purchase of an $893,000 bus simulator. Which replicates the experience of driving a bus with passengers in it. So I don't understand the point of view of the people on that board. And if anybody has guidance for me down the road or for the, if I'm replaced on this for the next soul who is placed on Kitsap Transit, I think that'd be really helpful. A lot of the increased density, Director Spencer, that we are planning on is very reliant on more public transportation in Bremerton. And I don't know how to, nobody is electing me queen of Kitsap Transit, and I've stopped expecting it. But yeah, so I just wanted to let you guys know that this is the situation as I see it. I'm certain other people would see it differently, but
I am willing to address you as,
I beg your pardon?
I'm willing to address you as queen of Kitsap Transit. If you'd like. Jeff,
No, thanks for the heads up on it. Do you know if they have like a 5-year roadmap plan or any sort of, long-term planning document?
They have long-term planning documents. And the long-term planning documents include, well, the mayor could discuss this, better than I see. He's been on it longer. But there is a long-term plan, and it includes the creation and addition and the upgrading of transfer stations. It does not, however, that I saw, include what's a really common app in almost every other city. It's on your smartphone, tells you where the bus is.
Yeah.
So that is another thing I have brought up, and
yeah, I mean, I know a little bit about that because I've met with Kitsap Transit about that for other reasons. And Bainbridge Island's actually had this sort of dial-a-ride for a long time. Now there's an app that's actually was developed by folks from Uber who started a company called Pingo. But it really was to cover like, areas where there's more rural and it doesn't make sense to have buses driving around. And, we probably have the most robust bus service, not that it's enough by any means. So actually, I want to kind of shotgun the mayor here a little bit to just give a little insight, because I haven't served on the Kitsap Transit Board, and obviously you've got some history at your time on council as well. But like, can you give us a little insight on like especially what you see like our role when we attend this type of thing? And because obviously they have their own administration, and they're, got folks from all the communities. So, oh, and Nick, can you turn your mic on too?
Well, it takes, I mean, and I'm not a council member coach. And so I'm hesitant to give advice on how to be an effective council member on Kitsap Transit. I can just speak on that myself. After learning about the agency, I was able to mobilize them and mobilize an entire region to support backfilling fast ferries. And that just took time to learn how transit operates, learn their business without telling them, and just trying to understand and learn and build relationships with all of our regional partners. Sunday service is coming. The transit does have strategies in place to recruit drivers. The comprehensive plan covers quite a bit of your concerns. The circulator route I'm very interested in, which is in their long range plan. We, obviously it's political because we're elected officials. So we have to, as Bremertonians, how do we get that to the top? So that's I can share with you that, you know, that's something I want to see, and it's something we've had. Back in the day, we used to have a route that served us like that. So we can do it again. And, other than that, let's just keep working together. Yeah,
All right, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, things, there's a pace at which things, like a catch-up commercial from our past. Okay, I want to remind folks that the 2023
Sorry, Council President, Audit Committee.
am not interested. I'm sorry, I skipped over that.
So,
I would like to invite Audit Committee Chair Jeff Coughlin to provide a summary of the highlights from the last meeting held on November 28th. Also the last meeting. of the
Nothing
year.
happened. No. It was actually a big meeting, great meeting. We didn't have one the previous month, so we caught up on a lot. The first good news is we're finally back to fully staffed committee. So we appointed Marlon Cameron as the second citizen member rep for the committee. So we're back at full strength, and it was really, you know, after a lot of the year trying to get a citizen member, we ended up with 3 really fantastic applicants, and it was really hard to choose between them. And they were just, I mean, they're all great. But it was a unanimous vote for Marlon Cameron, so we're excited to have him as the conduit to the community. Welcome aboard. Then we got briefing on a couple items from Auditor Sims. She finished looking at the budget mathematical accuracy, working with finance. And I think the only, major is not the right word. The only significant item she had was noticing that in a lot of the budget schedules, from my understanding, the ending fund balance for one year and the starting fund balance for the next year didn't match in a lot of cases. And I think that's just an issue of what's projected versus actual. Was Mike still? Oh, he ducked out.
Evaporated.
Okay. Consensus comment. Anyway, it's just an issue of not trying to have finance change any way they're calculating it, but perhaps just adding an asterisk and an explanation footnote of how they arrived at each figure and why they didn't match, just because you would expect that you end the year with one set of money, you start the year with that's the exact same set of money. So
But I'm wondering if it's what we talked about earlier about,
it probably,
like,
yeah.
are we looking at the most amended version of it as it happens?
I think that's exactly it. It's just if you're somebody looking at the budget schedule, it's not obvious that's the case.
Yeah.
So her suggestion, what I think was going to be to work with them to see if we can just add an explainer. Perfect. She did a routine audit of BCAT, all good, no significant findings. But she mentioned it's a really cool building and we should all visit as a council. So put that bug in the ear. The other significant one was we had our state auditors exit conference. So again, this is an outside audit where they pick a couple items. They did find 2 issues regarding piggybacking and verification. So if I got it right, we got some COVID relief funds. Some of it was used to buy some HR software. We went straight to the vendor to purchase that software. And we skipped the kind of normal bid process, which you're normally allowed to do. If you have an agreement with another organization as a city, and as part of that agreement, that is a contracted vendor that other organization is already using. So we went through Washington State Department of Enterprise Services, who had purchased that same software and bought the software directly. However, it turns out that our cooperative agreement with Department of Enterprise Services didn't specifically list that contractor. And that needed to, the proper procedure was that contractor should have been specifically listed. So a very complicated thing, assuming I got the explanation 100% right. But they did note that. So they recommended putting procedures in place to triple check when we do that we're piggybacking successfully. And the other one was just that some records weren't being properly kept that showed we checked to make sure that contractors we worked with weren't suspended or disbarred. And a review found that no contractors we hired were suspended or disbarred. So just a recommendation to make sure we keep those records for the future. And finally, coming up, Auditor Sims next is going to work on continuing with parking. So I know currently the parking 1-year extension contract is being negotiated. Audit committee had suggested, is she able to work with administration just as a second pair of eyes? It sounds like that help isn't needed at this time. But in lieu of that, audit committee directed that she'll basically look at other jurisdictions and how they handle parking and how many use a third-party contractor like Impark versus how many do it in-house through police department or other department. And then what the kind of cost difference is, just so we have those comparisons as a city. Yeah. So that'll be her next piece of work. And then on the slate after that is still the surplus land review for affordable housing of plats in the city that can be used. But the committee thought the parking was a little more timely with that 1-year extension coming up. That's audit.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I had skipped over. So the 2023 joint planning session or our retreat has been confirmed for Saturday, January 28th, 2023, beginning at 9 a.m. at Gold Mountain Golf Course Clubhouse. It will be the first, it will be important for council members to submit their proposed topics by the end of the first week in January to allow the 2023 council president enough time to consider the submitted topics for use in drafting the agenda. And to provide a courtesy advance notice to Mayor Wheeler and appropriate departments enough time to prepare. Obviously, the number of topics will be limited to the length of a reasonable agenda. Topics with multiple requests will receive priority. Once the agenda is issued, no late items or surprise topics will be allowed. I don't put topics on. I mean, I might not be the president, so that's why I said the 2023 president. Other general council business. Oh, no.
So I'm kind of superstitious about even mentioning this, but if something were to happen in the future that required us to meet remotely again, we would just have to do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. There, I'm all done talking about that.
Okay. All right.
Three quick other meeting briefings. Attended the BCAT community survey that presented the results of the community survey for the city. And I think the quick summary there is lots of great comments, kind of what you'd expect. But when that comes to us, I think the big thing to look at is we can do what's either, oh, I'm getting this from backwards, sorry. Basically, we do a franchise fee or this PEG fee, and I forgot to write down what the acronym stood for. But it's a bit of a sliding scale on how much we charge, not we charge, but subscribers get charged, and that money goes back into improving the city. But that decision will kind of come before us, so it can help expand service and facilities and services, but it is an extra bill for folks. And then I went to the KRCC meetup in Kingston the other week, which was fantastic. Mayor Wheeler, assuming all goes smooth, will be the new chair next year. So I'll issue an early congrats to the mayor for chairing KRCC. But they're going to be really focused on the comprehensive plan coming forward. And they did note that PSRC has a video on structural racism that's free for viewing. So you can reach out to get that. And then finally, there was the Warren Avenue Bridge Extension stakeholder meeting. I represented council at, and the summary there is WashDOT, I'd say, kind of came in and a bit of a change from what they had told previously on what their inspection equipment can do with the bridge and what they're willing to serve. I then reached out along with the West End Cycling Club to other folks at WashDOT. In my personal view was, we authorized funds to study a certain set of options, which included wider paths. I mean, ideally wider the better, but you get restrictions and you get more money. It's going to cost more. But that I was a little frustrated that they weren't even, kind of willing to tell us what amount of money we would have to budget for them to be able to inspect ultimately, what we built. So they just sent a letter yesterday that basically clarified that, they would hope that we take into account the limitations of their inspection fleet and what that does, but that they're willing to work with us, that whatever design we come up with, that's the best for the city, they are willing to then, take that into account and go forward. So I have a feeling that probably toss things a bit up in the air planning wise, but hopefully will let us keep all the options on the table as we go forward. So that's the briefing for that.
Okay, thank you. All right, up next is a 20-minute executive session to discuss pending litigation as allowed under RCW 42-30-110. No action is anticipated, so we will adjourn to the cookie chamber. Just, have we, can you? So we haven't started the 20 minutes yet? Okay, we are back from a quick break. We're going to do executive session, 20 minutes to discuss pending litigation as allowed under RCW 42-30-110. No action is anticipated. We will return in 20 minutes. Thank you. Okay, and we're back. Reminder that the next council meeting will be held on Wednesday, December 21st, 2022 at 5:30 PM in the first floor meeting chambers with a remote option. Meeting is adjourned.